Chapter 971. Wei Chuanxiu had interacted with Yu Qianqiu for a long time. After interacting with him for such a long time, he could tell that Yu Qianqiu was vicious and merciless. He could also do shameless flattery. However, no matter how much he changed, he could not change the insanity in his bones. It was like a kind of madness against the oppression of fate. Whoever touched his things would be oppressed and attacked by him. He had to resist fiercely. Wei Chuanxiu did not dare to go too far, when his inner elixir was in Yu Qianqiu's hand. That was why he saved the enchantress from Nongzhu. There was a man who gave me up. We had no relationship. Later, that man took a disciple and died soon after. In order to avenge that man, I got to know his disciple. Maybe I fell in love with him after a long time. I don't deny that I fell in love with his disciple. It's that simple. The enchantress smiled faintly with blood on the corner of her mouth. No one knew whether she was laughing at Wei Chuanxiu or herself. She just looked at Nongzhu, who was pushed back by Wei Chuanxiu, and said, "I don't understand why I have to be the woman of an irresponsible man who abandoned me and died a long time ago. I'm not a woman who likes the new and gets tired of the old. I've done a lot for that man and almost destroyed my whole sect. Of course, this is the reason I found to comfort myself later. After I fell in love with Yu Qianqiu, I was also very conflicted. But why did he make me his wife? Now I just want to be his woman." Then she looked around and said, "I know what I did was wrong, but I don't know what I did wrong. Who can tell me a reason to persuade me, so that I won't continue to do wrong?" Furong and the other girls looked at each other. Anyway, in their understanding, it must be wrong. There was no need for any reason. Anyway, it was wrong. This kind of thing should not happen. However, these girls sympathized with her now, so no one could say anything. Well, Wei Chuanqiu scratched his head and looked at Nongzhu. He immediately waved to him and said, "Toy boy, come here and tell her what she did wrong." Nongzhu walked over slowly and snorted, "Bitch. The reason is very simple. I've already said that what you're doing is against common sense." "Yes." Wei Chuanqiu nodded and said, "Doing so is against common sense. Little girl, let go. Don't be stubborn anymore. If you continue like this, the world will not tolerate you. In the end, you'll only be the one getting hurt, and you might even drag Yu Qianqiu down with you. Besides, Yu Qianqiu wasn't a good person. Why did he have to like him? And you guys?" Wei Chuanqiu then pointed at the rest of the girls and glared at them. "I say, you can like anyone, but why do you all want to board Yu Qianqiu's pirate ship? Is that broken ship that attractive to you? I think all of you should disperse. Disperse, everyone go home." He had a good idea. He was going to disband all the women of Yu Qianqiu and let his adopted daughter, Bai Suzhen, be the only one. Otherwise, he would not feel good if Bai Suzhen shared a man with other women. However, Zi curled her lips and said, "I won't go. I'm not his woman. I'm just his friend." She thought, "I want to board the pirate ship, but the pirate ship is so sneaky that it doesn't give me a chance to do so." Of course, she could only think about it in her heart. She couldn't say it out loud, or she would die of shame. She didn't have the courage of the enchantress. To be honest, she quite admired the enchantress. Nongzhu glanced at Zi and twitched his mouth. No one knew his daughter better than him. He probably guessed what his daughter was thinking. Against common sense? The enchantress suddenly giggled and asked, "Mr. Nongzhu, how am I against common sense? Is it because I dated his master?" "Yes." Nongzhu suddenly turned around and shouted, "Bitch! The world is so big. I don't care who you find, but not Yu Qianqiu." "Mr. Nongzhu, you can't convince me with this reason." The enchantress shook her head stubbornly. Nongzhu immediately shouted, "Then I'll kill you and end all troubles." "Mr. Nongzhu, you don't have to do it. If Yu Qianqiu wants me dead, he only needs to say one word, and I'll die in front of him immediately." The enchantress smiled faintly. She had long thought that there would be resistance when she was with Yu Qianqiu, but she just thought it was because of the common people's opinions and filthy words. However, she didn't care about those things at all. Since she could be called the enchantress of 100 charms by others, what kind of ugly words had she not heard before? However, she didn't expect that there would be resistance from Yu Qianqiu, which was so strong that it hurt her both physically and mentally. Nongzhu suddenly squinted her eyes and asked word by word, Did you two do something out of line? No, it's just my wishful thinking, the enchantress said fearlessly. The others looked at them in silence, especially Wei Chuanxiu. He couldn't figure out why this gigolo cared so much about this matter. It seemed that he cared about it very much, and his attitude was quite extreme. Enchantress, since you and I are from the same place, I'll give you a choice. Nongzhu waved her hand and pointed outside. You can either leave the World Chamber of Commerce and go wherever you want, or you can die in my hands. It's up to you. My patience is limited. You'd better make a decision quickly. I won't go anywhere. I'll wait here for you Qianqiu to come back. I'll only listen to him, and I won't listen to anyone else. The enchantress slowly turned around and walked straight to her room, as if she didn't care about Nongzhu's threat at all. Bitch, I think you're tired of living. Nongzhu shouted angrily and dashed forward. However, a green shadow flashed by and was caught by Wei Chuanxiu. Wei Chuanxiu grabbed her with one hand and scratched his head with the other. Let's wait for you Qianqiu to come back. What do you want to say when I come back? The door in front of them opened and Yu Qianqiu walked out. He was stunned when he saw them in the corridor. Then he strode over and asked suspiciously, What are you doing? Nongzhu pointed at the enchantress and shouted angrily, Ask her. Yu Qianqiu looked over and saw the enchantress standing at the door, motionless with her back facing the outside. Her messy hair was tied up casually with a rag, and her clothes were a little messy. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help frowning and asked, What's wrong with you? The enchantress didn't want Yu Qianqiu to see her embarrassed appearance. However, after hesitating for a while, she knew that she couldn't avoid what she had to face. So she slowly turned around and said as if nothing had happened, Nothing. However, the two palm marks on her face and the blood at the corner of her mouth made Yu Qianqiu squint and ask coldly, Who did this? The enchantress shook her head to show that she was fine and hoped to make peace. However, Nongzhu flashed over, pointed at her and scolded, This bitch is shameless. How dare she say that she is your woman? I think it's better to drive her out as soon as possible, so that she won't be hated by everyone. Hearing this, the enchantress immediately looked at Yu Qianqiu. The others also looked at Yu Qianqiu and wanted to know his reaction. Yu Qianqiu looked at Nongzhu expressionlessly and asked, Did you hit her? I taught her a lesson for you. If Bat King Wei didn't stop me, I would have killed her. Nongzhu was still angry and said. Yu Qianqiu's expression changed unpredictably. Huiming was dark and gloomy for a while before he sighed and said, We are all on the same side. What can't we talk about? Why did you hit her? What? She said that you are her man. Shouldn't I teach her a lesson? Nongzhu said harshly, Are you out of your mind? It's against common sense. Your reputation will be ruined if it is spread out. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and shook his head. He sighed slowly and said, Anyway, you shouldn't have hit her. The enchantress, who had always been seductive and confident, quietly turned her head to one side after hearing this. In fact, there were tears in her eyes. She really didn't ask for much. From what you said, is there really something going on between you two? Nongzhu said aggressively. Is it really as she said, that you are her man and she is your woman? Have you already done something out of line? Nothing happened between us. Yu Qianqiu stared at Nongzhu fiercely and said, But I won't allow anyone to hurt her, especially her. You'd better control your emotions. It's none of your business, and it won't affect you. I don't want to see you do anything to her. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. He clenched his fists tightly in his sleeves. Obviously, he was trying hard to control himself. Humph. Looks like I was the one who meddled in other people's business. Nongzhu was so angry that she laughed and said, I only ask you one question. Tell me honestly, is she your woman? Everyone's gaze was focused on Yu Qianqiu, waiting to see what he would say. Yu Qianqiu's Adam's apple moved and his mouth was dry. He turned his head to look at the enchantress, who was also looking at him, and said word by word, She is not my woman. Then he suddenly looked at Nongzhu and said, Are you satisfied now? Some things were just too powerful. Even if Yu Qianqiu was extremely daring, he still didn't dare to rashly cross them. The enchantress's body stiffened. She bit her lips hard, and fresh blood came out from the corner of her mouth. Ever since she made up her mind in the bamboo house, She knew what kind of price she would have to pay. Perhaps it would be a heavy price that she could not bear. Even though she was mentally prepared, she still felt a heart-wrenching pain in her chest when she heard Yu Qianqiu's words. Nongzhu glanced at them and sneered. Yu Qianqiu, you should have a bottom line. Some things should never be crossed. Otherwise, you will be infamous for thousands of years. That's all I have to say. I hope you remember what you said just now. After saying that, she walked straight to the corridor and disappeared at the top of the stairs, leaving a cold snort. Wei Chuanqiu coughed twice and said nothing. As the culprit, he also quietly floated back to where he was supposed to be. Yu Qianqiu only felt that his chest was as heavy as lead, and it was hard for him to breathe. He looked at the enchantress and asked, "Are you all right?" The enchantress forced a smile and shook her head. Her strong confidence in facing men was nowhere to be seen. Biting her lips, she opened the door of the room and quickly closed the door after entering. Yu Qianqiu heaved a heavy sigh and said to Yanyu, "Go and accompany her." Yanyu nodded and quickly entered the room of the enchantress. Chapter 972. Furong Wu Lixue and Ziyi stood quietly at the side. What happened just now was really emotional for the three of them. From what the three of them knew, the Allure Beauty's actions were wrong. However, the three of them inexplicably felt that Yu Qianqiu's words, "She's not my woman," were too cruel to the Allure Beauty. The three of them stared at the silent Yu Qianqiu, but their ears were paying attention to the movements in the temptress's room. However, they couldn't hear a sound at all. Obviously, she had set up a soundproof enchantment. The three of them were all women, so they could imagine how sad the temptress must be at this time. Maybe she was crying heartbreakingly. Originally, Wu Lixue was the one who was the most troubled and couldn't understand this matter. It was hard for her to accept the fact that so many women ran out of Yu Qianqiu for no reason. However, after witnessing all this, she realized that she was lucky. Moreover, in this world, it was very common for men to have 3 or 4 wives. She even sympathized with the temptress. She couldn't imagine what she would be like if one day Yu Qianqiu said that she wasn't his woman. She was afraid that she would collapse. The other women's thoughts were similar to her. Furong gently walked to Yu Qianqiu's side, held his arm, and said softly, "Go in and see her." However, Yu Qianqiu didn't answer the question and smiled bitterly. "I quite admire Yanggua now. Or should I say admire Master Jean?" Yanggua? Master Jean? The women were suddenly confused. They had never heard of these two names, but they were guessing which 2 masters in the immortal world were. Ziyi even asked foolishly, "I heard from my master that the immortal emperor in the immortal world is called Jean Tai. Is the Master Jean you mention him?" Yu Qianqiu immediately rolled his eyes and ignored her. How could he tell them the story of the master and disciple's incestuous relationship? If he told them, wouldn't it make them think of his inner thoughts? He patted the back of Furong's hand and said, "She needs your tolerance more. Otherwise, she will feel even worse if she stays with you every day. Can you understand me?" "I understand." Furong nodded and let go of his hand. She walked straight to the door of the Enchantress of 100 Charms and pushed the door open. After seeing her off, Yu Qianqiu slowly turned to look at Wu Lixue and asked, "Will you hate me?" He was worried that Wu Lixue wouldn't be able to accept the fact that he had too many women. A trace of grievance flashed across Wu Lixue's face, but he still shook his head. He walked to Yu Qianqiu's side and said in a low voice, "Can you help me save little Phoenix, sister?" When Yu Qianqiu heard that, he suddenly felt a headache coming on. Although she was shaking her head to show that she wouldn't, it felt like she was saying, "If you can't save Sister Phoenix, I won't forgive you." But how was he supposed to save a crow that had been dead for so long? If he was seriously injured, he could still think of a way. But in fact, he was already dead. However, he couldn't refuse her. Seeing that he was speechless, Wu Lixue thought that he had agreed. She immediately took out the dead crow from her storage pouch and brought it to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't know whether to take it or not, and his expression kept twitching. He now deeply understood that it wasn't a good thing to have too many women. Troublesome matters came one after another, and he still missed his single life. "Shuer, isn't this the crow?" Ziyi curiously stretched her head over and grabbed the crow in Wu Lixue's hand. After confirming that it was indeed dead, she immediately avoided it with a contemptuous, eh, and directly stuffed it into Yu Qianqiu's arms. Looking at Wu Lixue, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Shui-er, are you sure? How can something that's already dead be saved? As she said that, she looked at Yu Qianqiu and suddenly realized, I know, you're deliberately making things difficult for him. That's how it should be. She seemed to be taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. It's not a crow, it's a phoenix. Before it died, it said that Yu Qianqiu had a way to save it. When Wu Lixue remembered that the crow had been killed to save her, a look of sorrow immediately appeared on her face. Ziyi looked at the crow in Yu Qianqiu's hand in disbelief. You said that it can speak? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand at Ziyi, signaling her to shut up. Holding the crow's leg, he asked suspiciously, Shui-er, did it really say that I could save it? When he remembered that this crow was the famous phoenix from his previous life, he started to believe it a little. If the number one divine bird in the world could be killed so easily, then it wouldn't be called a divine bird. Even he didn't believe it. Wu Lixue nodded with certainty. Before little sister Phoenix died, she desperately told me to find a way to find you. She said that you could save it. I can save it. Yu Qianqiu held the crow's leg in one hand and swayed it in front of him. He rubbed his chin and muttered. After thinking for a while, he raised his eyebrows and said, Let's go and give it a try. After saying that, he walked towards a room with the crow's leg. Wu Lixue followed closely behind him. Ziyi naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to watch the show. She followed behind the two of them happily. In the room, the crow's corpse was thrown on a table. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and walked around the table twice. Ziyi also followed behind him like a con man. Wu Lixue looked at Yu Qianqiu expectantly. Could it be that it's not completely dead? Yu Qianqiu suddenly stopped and subconsciously asked Ziyi who was behind him. Ziyi looked at him, as if she was looking at an idiot. She seemed to be saying, It's already dead, and you still say that it's not completely dead? Forget it. It's useless to tell you. You don't understand modern medicine. Yu Qianqiu said. Then, he turned the dead crow over, so that its belly was facing the sky. He pressed 2 fingers on the crow's chest and kept pressing. The 2 girls looked at each other. Ziyi suddenly asked Wu Lixue, Shui-er, your little sister Phoenix is a female? Wu Lixue nodded. Ziyi immediately looked at Yu Qianqiu with disgust and said with disdain, It seems that not only are you a big liar, you're also a big pervert. You even took advantage of a female crow. Damn it. Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. Yu Qianqiu said with disdain. After pressing the crow's nipples for a while, he bent over and opened the crow's mouth. He blew hard into the crow's mouth. This idiot was doing artificial respiration like in his previous life. How could he think of this? Ziyi and Wu Lixue looked at him curiously with their mouths open. They had never seen such a treatment method before. They were quite doubtful whether it would work. However, the result was just as the 2 girls expected. After a while, Yu Qianqiu realized that the crow was still dead. He finally gave up and stood at the side, shaking his head and sighing. Wu Lixue leaned over and said with a sad face, Yu Qianqiu, you must think of a way to save my little sister Phoenix. I really can't think of any way to save it, but there's a way that we can try. I'm just afraid that if we fail, your little sister Phoenix's corpse won't even be found. I'm afraid that you'll blame me then, Yu Qianqiu said with a toothache. What is it? Wu Lixue asked worriedly. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, Do you still remember the phoenix's nirvana that I told you about at your house? Legend has it that the phoenix is an immortal bird. Every time it dies, it can be reborn. I just don't know if it's true or not. But didn't the crow say that it can be reborn after going through a tribulation? I think it should be true, but I'm still a little worried. If it can't be reborn after going through the tribulation, even if it doesn't turn into ashes, it will become a roasted crow. Ah, you can burn it back to life with fire? Is that true? Is this crow so magical? It's not a crow but a phoenix? Ziyi looked as if she had heard a ridiculous story. She couldn't help but reach out to fiddle with the dead crow on the table. Wu Lixue frowned slightly. She remembered that the crow seemed to have said something about rebirth. She intertwined her fingers together and asked, Should we try? Yu Qianqiu immediately shook his head and said, "It's yours, and you have to decide. What if you burn it down? Wouldn't that make you sad? That's the reason why I haven't done anything yet. I'll listen to you. Shui, since we can't think of any other way, just let him burn it." Ziyi persuaded Wu Lixue energetically. After all, it wasn't hers, so she was very decisive. Wu Lixue hesitated for a moment, then nodded weakly at Yu Qianqiu, agreeing. In any case, no matter if it was a crow or a phoenix, Yu Qianqiu didn't have a good impression of these dead birds that still tormented people. If they were burned down, so be it. After getting Wu Lixue's agreement, he didn't say anything else and directly grabbed the crow in his palm. A ball of red flames instantly surged out, enveloping the crow and burning it. As soon as the flames appeared, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He immediately felt that the dead crow's body was rapidly absorbing the heat from the flames. Wu Lixue and Ziyi looked at each other. They both saw the clues. A normal bird's feather would most likely turn into ashes upon contact with a raging fire. However, this crow's feather was not damaged at all in the raging fire. This was clearly illogical. Wu Lixue's eyes immediately lit up, feeling a glimmer of hope. TSK, there really is a way. Yu Qianqiu was amazed. He guessed that there really was such a thing as a phoenix undergoing nirvana. The heat released by the ordinary flames in his palm was actually not enough for the bird to absorb. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand towards the window, and a gust of wind swept out. The curtains on the window immediately rolled down, and the red flames immediately shone in the room. Just as the curtains were rolled down, the red flames retracted, and the green flames continued to burn the motionless crow in his palm. After the time it took to eat a meal, the crow still did not move. Yu Qianqiu simply couldn't believe it. Even with the huge amount of heat contained in the green flames, there was still no reaction from the crow. He really didn't know how long it would take for it to absorb. Then let's try the purple flames. Yu Qianqiu's eyebrows twitched, and the green flames retracted, while the purple flames rose up and enveloped the crow. The beautiful scene of the three-colored flames immediately caused Ziyi and Wu Lixue's hearts to flutter. And after the purple flames appeared, in just a few breaths' time, Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that the crow in his palm seemed to have a reaction. Chapter 973. In just a short while, the majestic and powerful energy of the purple flames seemed to have saturated the crow's body, and the speed at which the crow was absorbing the energy was gradually slowing down. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The power of the purple flames was indeed far greater than the blue flames, and if he used the blue flames to supply the crow to absorb, he was afraid that it would not be satisfied in a short period of time. Because of this, Yu Qianqiu began to ponder. He reckoned that the legendary phoenix's nirvana was actually the dead phoenix absorbing the energy within the flames, and when the energy was saturated, it should be able to be reborn. It was probably similar to charging the phoenix, and thinking about it, using fire to burn the phoenix was most likely the same. It really was an advanced divine bird, and had already reached the level of high technology in his previous world. At this moment, Wu Lixue and Ziyi both let out a surprised sound. They saw that the sleeping crow in Yu Qianqiu's palm had begun to emit a faint rainbow halo, flickering in and out of existence, and in an instant it was beautiful. Following that, a refreshing fragrance wafted over, and the flickering rainbow halo no longer flickered, but gradually condensed into a lingering rainbow cloud that circled around the sleeping crow in Yu Qianqiu's palm. The rainbow cloud's orbit was like a moving nebula in the universe, and it was mesmerizing, causing the three of them to feel relaxed and happy. As for the sleeping crow in the purple flames, it was as if it was sleeping sweetly in an ancient nebula. Its originally stiff legs were now gently retracting under its abdomen, and its stiff head had also returned to its shoulder feathers. Unknowingly, it had gone from lying on its side to nesting in Yu Qianqiu's palm, like a tired bird returning to its nest, sleeping under the starry sky, its demeanor unusually peaceful. Just as the fragrance was getting stronger and stronger, the heartwarming fragrance was suddenly sucked away from their nostrils. The three of them subconsciously stretched out their heads to chase after it, and took a deep breath. However, The fragrance was so resolute that it did not leave even the slightest trace behind. The air in front of them instantly became light and tasteless, completely returning to normal. The seven-colored cloud that had gradually spread out to cover half of the space in the room was also gradually shrinking. In the end, it was the size of a dinosaur egg, forming a seven-colored eggshell. The gorgeous flowing light was so beautiful that people didn't dare to breathe. After the rainbow-colored eggshell was formed, it completely blocked the vision of the three of them, and they could no longer see the sleeping crow inside. At the same time, the rainbow-colored eggshell also completely blocked the absorption of the purple flames. She asked herself in her heart, what kind of cry could make her heart tremble? What kind of cry? Yun Peng's white sword-like eyebrows knitted together, and he slowly muttered to himself, what kind of thing can make the cry of gold and jade? Many years ago, I heard from my late father that in ancient times, there was a divine beast phoenix that descended from the god realm to the immortal realm. The cry it made was like the resonance of gold and jade, sonorous and mellow. Could it be the cry of a phoenix? Phoenix? Are you kidding me? There must be something wrong with your brain. The divine beast phoenix is a supreme imperial family, with the noblest bloodline among us birds. It doesn't drink unless it's morning dew, it doesn't eat unless it's tender bamboo, and it doesn't rest unless it's 1,000-year-old Chinese parasol tree. Wei Chuanxiu looked like she had heard the funniest joke. She pointed around and said, you can't be saying that a phoenix would run to the World Chamber of Commerce, founded by Yu Qianqiu, right? Then isn't this phoenix a bit too blind? It really doesn't live up to its title of phoenix. I'm just saying. Yun Peng changed his mind and said, but this cry is indeed a bit strange. It's a phoenix. I'll chop off its head and give it to you. Wei Chuanxiu snorted and looked to the other side, saying, it must be Yu Qianqiu doing something again. Let's go take a look. The two of them then dashed over in a flash. Inside the room, the pheasant standing on Yu Qianqiu's palm suddenly opened its eyes. A seven-colored glow flashed in its sharp eyes, and it was even more spirited than a big rooster. Yu Qianqiu said in astonishment, Crow, is that you? How did you turn into a pheasant? You're the one who turned into a pheasant. Ah! The pheasant cried out in fear and flapped its wings to fly up. Its two claws were frantically clapping in the air. Yu Qianqiu's face instantly darkened. This wasn't the first time he saw this pheasant acting like it had stepped on dog poop. He had been humiliated like this in the Wu clan, but it was just a crow at that time. But this action undoubtedly proved that this pheasant in front of him was the crow of the past. Ah, this pheasant can talk. Zi looked at Wu Lixue and said in astonishment, Shuer, this pheasant is that crow of yours. Shut up. I'm not a pheasant. The pheasant flapped its wings and arrived in front of Zi. It spoke in a clear and melodious voice. I don't drink unless it's morning dew. I don't eat unless it's tender bamboo. And I don't perch unless it's 1,000-year-old parasol tree. I am a phoenix. Wu Lixue had heard these words more than once in the Wu clan. Back then, in order to correct Wu Lixue's bad habit of calling herself a crow, Crow had repeatedly warned Wu Lixue about these words. Wu Lixue, who was at the side, immediately applauded and cheered. Little Sister Phoenix, you really came back to life. Big Sister Shuer. The pheasant was also pleasantly surprised. It seemed to have tears in its eyes as it landed on Wu Lixue's shoulder. It hugged Wu Lixue's neck and whimpered. That evil person didn't hurt you, right? No. A beautiful woman, and a pheasant gave off a strange feeling, as if they had just escaped from death and met again. They were being overly sentimental. Zi immediately clicked her tongue and walked to Wu Lixue's side. She looked at the pheasant that could talk with curiosity. At this moment, the room's door was suddenly pushed open. Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng stood side by side at the door. Their gazes swept across the room and locked onto Wu Lixue's shoulder. They had heard the conversation clearly from outside. They actually heard someone claiming to be a phoenix. The two of them were shocked and immediately opened the door to verify the situation. However, when they saw the pheasant on Wu Lixue's shoulder, they were a little confused. After all, they had never seen a phoenix before. They had only heard the legends of phoenixes. In the legends, phoenixes all had colorful feathers and were indescribably noble. How could it look like a pheasant? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. It was actually Yin Peng and Wei Chuanxiu. Seeing that the two of them were staring at the pheasant on Wu Lishua's shoulder, he immediately laughed and said, "It's really rare for two seniors to come together. I wonder what noble purpose do you have?" The two of them looked at each other. Wei Chuanxiu looked at the pheasant that was hugging Wu Lishua's neck and asked, "It's a phoenix?" Her tone was full of doubt. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He immediately said perfunctorily, "You heard it yawn like a toad. Do you think it looks like a phoenix? It's clearly a pheasant." "You are the pheasant." When the pheasant heard someone insulting it, it immediately retracted its wings and jumped on Wu Lishua's shoulder. Its sharp eyes suddenly flashed with colorful light. It stared at Wei Chuanxiu and Yin Peng and said, "So it's a white-feathered great peng and a green bat. You actually dare to question this god's identity. How dare you?" Unexpectedly, Wu Lishua grabbed it and directly held it on his waist. He scolded, "Don't be rude to seniors." Then he nervously bowed to Wei Chuanxiu and Yin Peng and said, "Two seniors, please don't be offended. It is still young and ignorant. Schwer, let me go. This god's bloodline is noble. I am a supreme royal among the birds. How can I bow to them?" The pheasant whimpered and struggled. However, it was tightly held by Wu Lishua. It couldn't use brute force to break free for fear of hurting Wu Lishua. However, it really felt that bowing to Wei Chuanxiu and Yin Peng would make the phoenix lose face. It almost cried. Chapter 974. Yu Qianqiu saw some clues from the increasingly shocked expressions of Yin Peng and Wei Chuanxiu. He knew that it was meaningless to continue perfunctorily, so he walked to Wu Lishua's side and casually slapped the pheasant's head. Then he smilingly scolded, "So what if you're a phoenix? It's so big that even a bird can't compare. At most, it's a pheasant." This slap made the pheasant squeal. It struggled under Wu Lishua's arm. "Yu Qianqiu, you dare to hit this god." It shouted that it wanted to fight Yu Qianqiu to the death. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with this useless fella that could be easily killed by Yin Juexing. He stretched his hand towards the door and walked out with Yin Peng and Wei Chuanxiu. The three went up to the rooftop and set up a soundproof barrier. They stood side by side in front of the white jade railings. Yin Peng and Wei Chuanxiu stood on the left and right of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu glanced around and looked into the distance. He wasn't in a hurry to speak. If they had any questions, they would ask him. The two early-stage Immortal Emperor experts were still shocked by the phoenix's roar. Although they didn't see the phoenix's sacred art with their own eyes, they were sure that the pheasant was a phoenix. The kung-kung sound they heard at first was the most powerful evidence. Secondly, it was rumored that after a phoenix hatched from its shell, it could speak the human language. This wasn't something that other beasts could compare with. It represented the extremely superior noble bloodline of a mythological beast. From the clear female voice it let out, it was clear that it was still a young phoenix. There was still a long way to go before it could become a truly majestic and noble phoenix. It still needed to grow. But even though it was still a young phoenix, the shock it brought to the two was indescribable. When the two came back to their senses, they felt their mouths were dry. Wei Chuanqiu slowly turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu like he was a monster. Just now, this fella had casually slapped the phoenix like he was bullying a wimpy kid. For these winged fellows, there were probably not many who dared to do so. And that girl, she actually held the phoenix under her arm like she was holding a chicken. What was wrong with this world? Could it be that the phoenix had no place in their eyes? However, what Wei Chuanqiu couldn't figure out the most was that the phoenix was a divine beast that lived in the immortal realm. If it wanted to descend to the immortal realm, it should be a real adult phoenix. Why did a young phoenix appear? And why did it fall into this brat's hands? It was simply unimaginable. Yin Peng, who had also turned around, had the same thoughts. Yu Qianqiu, tell us honestly, where did you get this baby phoenix from? Wei Chuanqiu held it in for a long time before saying this. I just happened to pick it up. Yu Qianqiu shrugged disapprovingly. You happened to pick it up? Wei Chuanqiu and Yin Peng lost their voices at the same time. Yin Peng, who had always been calm, couldn't bear to listen any longer. His white sword-like eyebrows flew up as he coldly snorted. You Qianqiu, it seems like the two of us are nothing in your eyes. Do you think we're 3 years old? You just happened to pick up a phoenix. Then when did you happen to pick up a divine dragon for us to see? Yu Qianqiu looked at Yin Peng blankly, and thought to himself, you really don't want to mess with this daddy. This daddy really did happen to meet a divine dragon. But the other party was a bit too scary, so it really wasn't easy to pick it up. If there's a chance, I'll take it out, and let you have a good look. As long as you don't be afraid, it's fine. In any case, this daddy was scared shitless at that time, and still doesn't dare to see it a second time. Looking at the two's expressions, he knew that if he didn't give a complete reason, he was afraid that they would be at odds with him. He shook his head, made a big circle with his hands, and said with a bitter smile. To be exact, at the beginning, I only picked up an egg. It was a very strange egg that could even glow, and it was about this big. Before, I didn't know that there was a phoenix inside. Even if it hatched, I didn't know that it was a phoenix. After all, I've never seen a phoenix before. It was that pheasant's mouth that was very cheap, and it kept chirping that it was some divine bird phoenix. That's what happened. There's nothing I can do if you don't believe me. In short, I really did pick it up. His words were half true and half false. It was impossible for him to reveal the things that happened in the human world, but his attitude could be considered sincere, and it didn't seem like he was faking it. Wei Chuanqiu and Yin Peng looked at each other. The latter sized up Yu Qianqiu with a slightly judgmental gaze and said, even if it's a phoenix egg, I'm afraid that it can't be hatched just because you say so. Could it be that you know how to hatch a phoenix egg? His tone was full of doubt, and this was the biggest point that Yu Qianqiu's words gave the two the biggest doubt. You guys think too highly of me. Yu Qianqiu laughed, and embarrassedly rubbed his hands. At that time, I really thought that the egg looked too strange. In fact, I didn't think it was an egg at first, but when I saw that it was actually glowing, I wanted to open it to see if there was any treasure inside. But you guys don't know, that egg was really too hard. I tried everything I could, but I couldn't open it. In the end, I really had no other choice, so I thought of a method that wasn't really a method, and threw it into the fire. I just wanted to give it a try. Hee. Speaking of which, it was really a coincidence. No matter how much strength I used, I couldn't open it. In the end, when I burned it with fire, it really did burn, and that fellow jumped out from inside, claiming to be a divine bird phoenix. That's right. I still have that eggshell. Without hesitation, Yu Qianqiu immediately took out 2 pieces of the phoenix eggshell that he had collected, and handed them to the two. In order to win their trust, it could be said that he didn't hold anything back. This was also an action that couldn't be helped. After all, at the moment, these two fellows were the only gold medal fighters that he could bring out. The slightly protruding surface of the eggshell was pitch black, and the slightly concave inside carried a brilliant silver splendor. It was very beautiful. The two held the item in their hands and examined it slightly. Immediately, their expressions were filled with fear. The two of them felt an awe-inspiring majesty from the eggshell. Humans might not be able to discover anything, but to the two of them, they had the feeling of wanting to pry into the secrets of the royal family, only to be met with a severe warning. The majesty directly shocked the two of them. All of the doubts in the two's hearts immediately disappeared. They were completely sure that this was the phoenix eggshell. So what Yu Qianqiu said to them was naturally also true. To be able to reveal such a matter that shouldn't be spoken of lightly to others, the way the two looked at Yu Qianqiu quietly changed. Good stuff. Wei Chuanqiu looked at the eggshell in her hand in amazement. Then she looked at Yun Peng and said, Yun Peng, if I'm not wrong, this thing should be of great benefit to you. Yun Peng silently nodded, but still returned it to Yu Qianqiu's hand. Yun Peng, if I'm not wrong, this thing should be of great benefit to you. This was the first time Yu Qianqiu saw Yun Peng reveal a gaze filled with reluctance and desire towards something. He asked with some curiosity, Senior Yun, why don't you tell me what benefit this thing has to you? Yun Peng tried his best to shift his gaze away from the eggshell. He knew in his heart that if this eggshell was in the hands of someone else, he was afraid that he would go all out to snatch it, because this thing was too precious to him. However, He was still the man of Wei Chuanqiu's adopted daughter, so he couldn't bring himself to do such a thing. Seeing that he didn't want to say anything, Yu Qianqiu looked at Wei Chuanqiu suspiciously. Wei Chuanqiu looked at the eggshell in her hand thoughtfully for a while, then suddenly frowned and said, "Phoenix egg. Phoenix egg. I seem to have heard of a legend a long time ago, but it's too long ago. I can't remember, but it seems I remember." Wei Chuanqiu suddenly stared at Yin Peng and asked, "Could it be the legendary Phoenix True Blood?" Yin Peng slowly turned his head, his eyes revealing a strange expression, and nodded vigorously. Wei Chuanqiu suddenly came to a realization, and said, "I understand, I finally understand, this thing is indeed of great benefit to you." Phoenix True Blood? Yu Qianqiu's heart itched when he heard this, and pulled on Wei Chuanqiu's big sleeve, and said, "Bat King Wei, what is Phoenix True Blood?" Wei Chuanqiu looked at him, and seemed to be a little hesitant, as if considering whether to tell him or not. But looking at the eggshell in her hand, and then looking at Yin Peng, she finally organized her thoughts, and said in a deep voice, "According to legend, the divine beasts of the god realm are the dragon and the phoenix, the beast sovereign, and the bird sovereign. To be able to become a sovereign, there is naturally something extraordinary that cannot be compared. According to legend, the phoenix will experience 9 tribulations, bathing in the flames of nirvana 9 times. And every time it successfully goes through a tribulation, its cultivation will become stronger. It can be said to be a kind of evolution in the midst of death, and it is very miraculous. However, Phoenix True Blood is not something that can be found in every phoenix. Only the blood of a phoenix that has experienced 9 tribulations is qualified to be called Phoenix True Blood. And only such a phoenix has the chance to give birth to a phoenix egg." Yu Qianqiu was startled, and looked at the eggshell in his hand, and said, "Then the connection between the two is?" "Very simple," Wei Chuanqiu said with a serious expression. "Phoenixes are born to experience 9 tribulations, and can be said to have experienced many disasters before they can ascend to the position of sovereign, and make all birds submit to them. Legend has it that when a phoenix lays an egg, it thinks of the many disasters that will befall its children in the future, and its heart is filled with grief, so it weeps blood and cries in sorrow. There seems to be a saying called Phoenix weeps blood. In short, this means that when a phoenix lays an egg, the eggshell will be stained with Phoenix True Blood. With your intelligence, you should understand what I mean." Yu Qianqiu made an "oh" sound, and shook the eggshell in his hand as he nodded repeatedly, and said, "What you mean is that this eggshell is stained with Phoenix True Blood, and this Phoenix True Blood is very beneficial to Senior Yin. At least you are smart." Wei Chuanqiu praised him, and then winked as he used his elbow to nudge Yu Qianqiu, and said, "Look at how Senior Yin helps you protect the World Commerce Chamber every day, and even saved your life from the hands of Grey Cloud Exine last time. Even if he doesn't have meritorious service, he has worked hard. Shouldn't you show some appreciation?" The meaning of these words was very clear. It was nothing more than asking Yu Qianqiu to give this phoenix eggshell to Yin Peng. When these words came out, Ren Yunpeng, who was usually very calm, couldn't help but tremble slightly. He turned his head, and didn't dare to look at Yu Qianqiu. Presumably, the heart in his chest was beating non-stop. Chapter 975. No problem. We're all a family, so it's not right if we don't help each other out. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and appeared to be exceptionally forthright. Yin Peng's body trembled as he turned around with an excited expression. He was preparing what words of gratitude he should say after Yu Qianqiu gave the item to him. Wei Chuanqiu laughed heartily as he patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, and said to Yin Peng, "Old bird, how is it? I didn't misjudge you, did I? You followed me, didn't you? You didn't think you'd encounter such a great opportunity, did you?" However, he was happy a bit too early. The item was said to be so precious that it could move Yin Peng's heart. With Yu Qianqiu's personality, it really wasn't in line with his personality if he carelessly gave it away. It won't be too late to give it away later. Yu Qianqiu took advantage of Wei Chuanqiu's happy moment to take back the piece of eggshell in his hand. He coughed and said, Let me figure out what benefits this Phoenix True Blood has for Senior Yun first. I won't be able to bear the responsibility if something unexpected happens. The two's expressions immediately froze. Yunpeng saw him take the item from Wei Chuanxiu's hand and thought that he was going to personally give it to him. He was already prepared to take it, but who knew that these words would pop out? Wei Chuanxiu also thought that he was going to give it to Yunpeng, so he allowed him to take it back. Otherwise, with Wei Chuanxiu's personality, he would probably have kept a piece for Yunpeng even if he had to act shamelessly. Actually, this couldn't be blamed on Yu Qianqiu. He still had several dozen pieces of broken phoenix eggshells in his hands. How could he not figure out what they were used for? He couldn't just keep them in his hands like trash after knowing that they were treasures, right? At the very least, he needed to know how much he had helped Yunpeng, so that he could ask for repayment in the future. You brat, you can't be thinking of going back on your word, right? Wei Chuanxiu naturally felt like he had been played. Look at what you're saying. My reputation is well known. Every spit is like a nail. My words are like a nail on a board. Unless the mountains have no edges and the heavens and earth merge together, I will not do anything that goes back on my word. Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and promised solemnly, I really want to know what benefits this Phoenix True Blood has for Senior Yin. I really want to know with a responsible attitude whether or not there will be any accidents. Although these words sounded a little exaggerated, Wei Chuanxiu's expression finally became a little better. He thought to himself, as long as you promise to give, it's fine. If you dare to go back on your word, Grandpa will openly rob you. Bah! Accident my ass. Are you trying to play some tricks? He first expressed his doubts before explaining. The true blood of the phoenix is a precious treasure for birds. If one can absorb and refine it for their own use, not only can they borrow the power of the true blood to quickly increase their cultivation, if they are lucky, they can even obtain a chance to come back to life. After coming back to life, they will be like the phoenix, and their cultivation will be even more powerful. Of course, this depends on the amount of phoenix true blood on the eggshell. Resurrection from the dead. Oh my God, this is such a big favor. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but daydream absent-mindedly. I wonder what the effects will be after I absorb the true blood of the phoenix. I have the most phoenix eggshells. If I can be reborn like a crow in a critical moment, it will be too perfect. Looking at his drooling and wet dreams, Wei Chuanxiu could no longer see what he was thinking. It was more like he was stupid. He immediately sneered and said, Stop daydreaming here. The true blood of the phoenix is useless to humans. Even if I pour you a few buckets of true blood of the phoenix, you will still be like this. It is only effective on birds of feathers like the Yunpeng. Why? Yu Qianqiu suddenly woke up from his dream and asked with some grief and indignation. There is no why. In short, it is useless to humans. Wei Chuanxiu liked to see him like this. He sneered and said, Forget about you, even I am useless. The true blood of the phoenix can only be absorbed by birds of feathers. Why? Don't try to fool me. Aren't you also a bird? Yu Qianqiu's voice became a bit louder. The grief and indignation of having his dreams shattered was clearly painted on his face. Although my original body also has a pair of wings, to be exact, I belong to the beast category and not the bird category. Although I am between the bird category and the beast category, I cannot enjoy the true blood of the phoenix. Wei Chuanxiu glanced at the eggshell in his hand and snorted coldly. I don't even feel wronged. What are you feeling wronged for? You must know that everything in the world has its gains and losses. There are enough benefits from humans. Don't tell me you want to fight for this as well. Hearing him say this, Yu Qianqiu finally felt a bit better. He was suddenly startled and said, Bat King Wei, you said you are between the bird category and the beast category. Could it be that the word beast originated from your bat clan? You are the beast. Do you want to die? Wei Chuanqiu immediately became angry. Joking. Don't be angry, don't be angry. After making fun of the other party, Yu Qianqiu's heart finally felt a bit better. However, he still said unwillingly, Even birds like Senior Yun and the others can obtain benefits from the God Realm. Can't we also obtain some benefits from the God Realm? Of course, as long as you have the ability to do it. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he asked, "What kind of benefits?" Speaking of this, Wei Chuanqiu became serious and said with a serious expression, "Have you forgotten what I told you before? Among the top divine beasts in the god realm, dragons and phoenixes are revered. Legend has it that there is an illusory god in the god realm. Even the gods in the god realm have never seen his true body. No one knows if he is a man or a woman, and no one knows how high his cultivation is. Legend has it that this illusory god usually doesn't communicate with anyone, but will directly communicate with dragons and phoenixes. It is said that dragons and phoenixes are his messengers. When he encounters something that needs to be done with force, he will order dragons to do it on his behalf, while phoenixes are responsible for delivering his decrees. Dragons and phoenixes can be said to be his messengers. So awesome! You dare to play tricks in front of all living beings in the god realm. You're really amazing." Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while, and then he came to a realization. This matter is too far away. What does it have to do with the benefits you told me? Of course it has something to do with it. Your benefits are in the body of the dragon, who is in charge of war. Wei Chuanqiu laughed and said, "Phoenixes have phoenix true blood. Dragons also have coiling dragon true blood. The so-called coiling dragon has the meaning of occupying the land and overlooking all living beings. It represents the supreme of the dragon race. Ordinary dragons don't dare to be crowned with the title of coiling dragon. Its rank is equivalent to that of a phoenix that has gone through 9 tribulations. As long as you find the coiling dragon, that is like a 9 tribulations phoenix, capture it and release some coiling dragon true blood. Then smear it on your whole body to ensure that the toughness of your skin is unparalleled in the world. I reckon that the treasures in the immortal world won't be able to harm you at all. This benefit is not bad, right? TSK. If the coiling dragon true blood really has this benefit, then it is indeed very good." Yu Qianqiu suddenly reacted after a moment of relaxation. He said with a dark face, "Old bat, are you playing with me? Just think about it. The 9 tribulations phoenix was already very powerful. The martial envoy coiling dragon who was in charge of war was naturally even more amazing. If he had the ability to capture the coiling dragon and release his blood, then wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in the immortal world? Even immortal Emperor Jin Tai wouldn't be a problem. There would be no need to go through so much trouble. What are you playing with? This is an ancient legend that I heard by chance from an elder. Ordinary people don't have the opportunity to hear it even if they want to. I'm telling you for free is already letting you off easy." Wei Chuanqiu pointed at Yun Peng, who was also listening with a face full of yearning, and said, "If you don't believe me, ask him if he has heard of it before." Yu Qianqiu looked at Yun Peng suspiciously. Yun Peng was startled for a moment, before shaking his head at Yu Qianqiu. His white sword-like eyebrows suddenly trembled as he stared at Wei Chuanqiu and slowly asked, "The elder who told you these legends, could it be the one who told you about the past of Zhang, Yi and Ming?" Wei Chuanqiu was startled for a moment before he nodded with a respectful expression and said, "I was really lucky to meet him and hear some stories from him," he said with a sigh as if he was very nostalgic. Seeing the two talking so mysteriously, Yu Qianqiu's curiosity was piqued again. When he heard the story of Tai Shu Zhang, demon god Yi, and the woman named Ming from Wei Chuanqiu's mouth, he once suspected something. Although immortal Emperor Jin Tai had ruled the immortal world for countless years, the era of Zhang, Yi, and Ming was long before Jin Tai. Almost no one in the immortal world knew about such a long time ago. But the elder Wei Chuanqiu spoke of was able to know the secrets of Zhang, Yi, and Ming. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. Bat King Wei, who is this elder you're talking about? Yu Qianqiu curiously asked. However, after Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other, they seemed to be a bit secretive and didn't say anything. The more it was like this, the more Yu Qianqiu's heart itched. He immediately threw the matter of being tricked to the back of his mind and pulled Wei Chuanqiu's sleeve like a child asking for candy. He chuckled and said, "We are all family, what is there to hide? If it's really inconvenient to say it, I won't force you. Why don't you find an opportunity to introduce me to this elder? Let me see the elegant demeanor of this senior. He still liked to walk the path of the higher-ups. Don't always pull and pull, okay?" Wei Chuanxiu pulled back her sleeve from Yu Qianqiu's hand and waved her hand with a dignified expression. Don't ask me this again in the future. This elder is not someone you can meet just because you want to. Everything depends on fate. If you are really fated to meet him, you will meet him sooner or later. Alright, don't get sidetracked, give the thing to Yinpeng. Yinpeng also nodded with a dignified expression, as if he knew something about this elder. After observing their expressions, Yu Qianqiu knew that it was useless to continue asking. It seemed that he would have to start with Bai Suzhen, if there was a chance in the future, and let Bai Suzhen ask Wei Chuanxiu. Presumably, with Bai Suzhen's help, they would be able to dig out the identity of this mysterious elder from Wei Chuanxiu's mouth. The reason why he was so curious was that people of Wei Chuanxiu and Yinpeng's age and level generally wouldn't easily call anyone elder. Even with immortal Emperor Jin Tai's power, age and cultivation, the two of them wouldn't call him elder. If there was someone older, the two of them might call him old ghost, or something like that. But for someone like this to respectfully call him elder, when he wasn't even in front of him, it was a bit strange. This person was most likely not simple. Chapter 976. Seeing the two's expressions, Yu Qianqiu knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them. After some hesitation, he handed the 2 pieces of eggshells to Yinpeng. Yinpeng, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. If Yu Qianqiu was an outsider, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to directly snatch it. But because of his relationship with Wei Chuanxiu, if he accepted it, he would owe Yu Qianqiu a big favor. Wei Chuanxiu saw through his hesitation and directly took the things Yu Qianqiu handed over. He slapped them into Yinpeng's hands and smiled. Why think so much? Don't be polite with this kid. The eggs he's gesturing at are so big. I believe there are more than these 2 pieces. If you don't have enough, then find him. As he said this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and teased. You won't be so stingy as to hide them from me, right? Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. Then he asked curiously, since the Phoenix True Blood can help Senior Yin increase his cultivation, I wonder how much these 2 pieces can help you. Wei Chuanxiu only had a rough idea of this matter. The real inside story was probably only known by those who knew about it. He also looked at Yinpeng curiously. Yinpeng paused, his eyes flashed with a strange light. I can't say how much I can improve myself. The key is still how much Phoenix True Blood is on the eggshells. Maybe it's mid-stage Immortal Emperor. Maybe it's late-stage Immortal Emperor. Maybe it's not impossible to step into the God realm. It all depends on my luck. When he said this, Wei Chuanxiu and Yu Qianqiu cried out in unison, God realm. Then the two looked at each other in disbelief. Fuck. If he didn't invest now, then when? Yu Qianqiu steeled his heart and immediately took out the dozens of eggshells. He piled them into Yinpeng's arms without hesitation. Yinpeng looked at the pile of eggshells in his arms. His face, which had always been calm, was unusually excited. The word thank you jumped out of his mouth. He really didn't know what else to say. Well done. Wei Chuanxiu excitedly patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder with great strength. Immediately, Yu Qianqiu grimaced in pain. Wei Chuanxiu immediately apologized and helped him rub it. Yu Qianqiu shook off Yinpeng's claws with one arm and smiled brightly at Yinpeng. We're a family, so we should help each other. You're treating me like an outsider if you thank me. I've given you all the phoenix eggshells. I hope your cultivation is as high as possible, so that we don't have to look at other people's faces. He was also a person who could take and let go. When it was time to make a decision, he would make a decision. There was no need to hesitate. Although the Phoenix True Blood was precious, it didn't have much use for him at the moment. Rather than keeping it to himself, it was better to sell a huge favor. He believed in his own eyes. Although Yinpeng was a man of few words, he was a man of character. Today, he had helped Yinpeng with all his might. In the future, when Yinpeng became successful, he would definitely repay him generously. After seeing this scene, Wei Chuanqiu twirled his mustache and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a slight nod. His expression was full of praise. He didn't think that Yu Qianqiu would be so generous as to give such a precious phoenix eggshell to Yinpeng without reservation. However, What surprised him even more was still to come. He saw Yu Qianqiu take out a green bead the size of an egg. With a smile, he held it in his palm and brought it in front of him. Naiden. Yin Peng was startled. He didn't understand what the two meant. He was right. It was indeed the Naiden. Moreover, it was the Naiden that Yu Qianqiu had stolen from Wei Chuanxiu. Looking at it now, it would most likely be returned to its original owner. Wei Chuanxiu naturally saw through Yu Qianqiu's intentions. He couldn't help but feel excited. He wasn't in a hurry to receive the item. Instead, he ridiculed. What's wrong with you today? Could it be that you found your conscience and are ready to turn over a new leaf? Don't say such useless things. I already said, we're all one family. There's no need to say such things. Yu Qianqiu once again emphasized his philosophy of being a good person. He grinned and said, I say, do you still want it? If you don't, then forget it. He acted as if he wanted to take it back. How could Wei Chuanxiu not want it? He opened his mouth and sucked. The green bead the size of an egg shone with a green light. It drilled into his mouth and went into his stomach. This is your Naiden? How did you condense a Naiden? Yin Peng's face was filled with shock. He didn't know that Wei Chuanxiu cultivated the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. Wei Chuanxiu glanced at Yu Qianqiu and smiled sheepishly. Don't ask anymore. When the opportunity is ripe, I'll naturally tell you the whole story. Yin Peng looked at Yu Qianqiu again. He couldn't figure out how Wei Chuanxiu's Naiden ended up in Yu Qianqiu's hands. Seeing that Yin Peng still had a puzzled look, Wei Chuanxiu patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder and changed the topic. Kid, your luck is a little too good. You can even pick up a phoenix egg? Maybe it's because my luck is good. Seeing that his exaggerated words caused the two to roll their eyes at him, Yu Qianqiu immediately changed his words and sighed. Luck my ass. Logically speaking, I picked up this egg and hatched it with my own hands. This little phoenix should be close to me. But it's strange. This little bastard is like an enemy to me. Instead, he's as close as a sister to Schwer. So heartless. Her. This might be the problem of your character that you were talking about. Wei Chuanxiu patted his shoulder and used his words to stop him. In the end, Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, heartless. Speaking of that phoenix chick, after putting away the eggshell, Yin Peng pondered for a while and said, although there are probably only a few people in the immortal world who have seen a phoenix, we still have to be careful. It's best to make it appear less often. Otherwise, it might cause big trouble. Hearing that, Wei Chuanqiu's playful expression also froze and became somewhat serious. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them suspiciously and asked, why? Because the phoenix's descent means that the world is about to be in chaos. Wei Chuanqiu said in a deep voice, there is such a saying. Yin Peng nodded and said, legend has it that a phoenix appeared 100,000 years ago. At the same time, it also brought with it a star orb that is said to be able to make people become gods. In the end, it caused a fierce battle between Jin Tai, Bai Qi, and the demon lord of 10,000 swords. That battle caused chaos in the three realms. Isn't this the sign that the phoenix's descent will cause the world to be in chaos? Although I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it's true. Once others know that another phoenix has descended, the consequences can be imagined. Especially Jin Tai. I'm afraid he won't sit by and do nothing. So it's better to keep this matter a secret. He had always been a man of few words. Today, he was able to say so many words of advice to Yu Qianqiu in one breath. It was obvious that he sincerely regarded Yu Qianqiu as one of his own. It was clear that Yu Qianqiu's generous act of buying people's hearts was effective. I understand. I'll go and tell them now so that they don't cause any unnecessary trouble. Yu Qianqiu turned and left with a solemn face. He naturally understood the seriousness of this matter. In the holy land of Baiwan Nation's Wen family, in the forbidden area, where Wen Lanfeng usually cultivated, Yan Juexing knelt on the ground, opened his arms and looked up to the sky. His expression was frighteningly distorted, and his nails had sunk deep into his palms. The blue veins on his forehead and neck were bulging ferociously. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was flushed red. He knelt on the ground and shouted silently at the top of his lungs. After maintaining this state for a long time, he suddenly roared angrily, Yu Qianqiu! The continuous roar reverberated in the forbidden area. Fortunately, Wenrui, who was standing respectfully at the side, had already set up a soundproof barrier. Otherwise, this roar would have alarmed everyone in the holy land of Wen family. Yan Juexing roared until there was no sound. Then, he hugged his head with his arms and fell to the ground. He curled up and panted heavily. His eyes were red, as if he was a beast that wanted to eat a human. After being seriously injured by Yu Qianqiu last time, he hid in the Baiwan nation's imperial palace to recuperate. In order to maintain the smooth flow of information to the cultivation world, he set his eyes on Wen Lanfeng in the holy land of Wen family, because he was confident that he could control Wen Lanfeng with his current cultivation. In the end, after sneaking into the holy land of Wen family with Shouchen's appearance, he did not find Wen Lanfeng after searching inside and outside. Instead, he found Wenrui, who had been out of contact for a long time, and found that the other had broken free from the control of his demon eye. Wenrui did not know Shouchen, and was once again controlled by Yan Juexing due to carelessness. After asking, Yan Juexing found out that Yu Qianqiu already had a panacea in his hands to remove the control of his demon eye. Wen Lanfeng asked for a panacea to remove Wenrui's control. After asking about Wen Lanfeng's whereabouts, he found out that Wen Lanfeng had long been summoned by Yu Qianqiu and had not returned. As for where he went, Wenrui did not know due to Wen Lanfeng's secrecy. Since he'd taken control of Wenrui once more, he couldn't avoid inquiring about the myriad Devil Palace and Flower Palace. He'd more or less sensed that with Yu Qianqiu's ruthlessness, Yu Qianqiu would probably not let the myriad Devil Palace and Flower Palace off. The result was not much different from what he had expected. Yu Qianqiu personally went to the Flower Palace to settle the score. Fortunately, Ma Jiugu of Fuxian Island arrived in time, and his mother and sister escaped. However, they were forced to leave the Flower Palace, where they had lived for many years, and fled to Fuxian Island. As for the Palace of 10,000 Demons, as expected, it had been completely razed to the ground. Yu Qianqiu had erased it from the face of the cultivation world. What made him most miserable was that his grandfather and father were forced to commit suicide in public to beg Yu Qianqiu to let the rest of the 10,000 demons go. In the end, after his grandfather and father shed their blood, Yu Qianqiu still killed the rest. The senior brothers left by Bing Qingzi also died together, and Yu Qianqiu did not let any of them go. At the thought of his grandfather and father being forced to commit suicide, Yan Juexing was in so much pain that he almost collapsed. He hated Yu Qianqiu, but he hated himself even more. He hated himself for being overconfident and not listening to his grandfather's advice. He hated himself for not knowing that there was always someone better out there. As a result, this disaster was brought upon him, and his family was forced to either die or escape. He fell to the ground with his head in his hands and quietly curled up. After a day and a night, he regained his indifference and slowly woke up from the ground. He gradually got up and walked out step by step. Wenrui followed him respectfully. After a few steps, he saw Yan Juexing suddenly turn around and stare at him indifferently. "You don't need to follow me anymore. Just hide here, and do what you should do. I hope I have a chance to summon you in the future." After saying that, he turned around and walked out with a resolute expression. Wenrui respectfully saluted behind him and said, "This subordinate is always at master's command." Chapter 977. In Wenqing Palace, little Yin Yun's laughter continued. The demonic blade grew bigger, and was swaying in the air while carrying him. Little Yin Yun shouted from time to time, "Father, shake it faster, shake it faster." Yan Juexing crossed his arms, and looked at him with a doting expression. The hipster sat on the steps in the house with a blissful expression. Her knees were cushioned by a piece of white silk that was stretched tight with a bamboo strip. She was embroidering a butterfly that was about to fly. One of the pairs of butterflies had been embroidered, and the other one was almost done as well. It would be completed with just 2 tentacles. The hipster, who was immersed in her embroidery, would look up at the father and son from time to time. She would shake her head and smile warmly before continuing to embroider. She had completely shed the image of an unruly princess, and was now a good wife and loving mother. Some people said that a good wife and loving mother was not born naturally. Most of them were formed after time. It was probably referring to women like her. She liked her current life very much, and was very satisfied with it. The exciting cultivation world that Yan Juexing told her about was not tempting to her at all, because it was too far away from her. She did not have too many desires, and only hoped that her family could live peacefully like this. "Father, I want to ride a horse." Little Yan Yin, who was riding on the demonic blade, suddenly shouted. "Okay." Yan Juexing nodded amiably. The demonic blade flipped over, and little Yan Yin landed in his father's arms with a cheer. The demonic blade also quickly shrunk, and flashed into Yan Juexing's storage bag. Yan Juexing put down his son, and knelt down on all fours. Little Yan Yin immediately climbed onto his back and sat on it, hitting Yan Juexing's butt with the back of his hand and shouting, "Giddy, giddy, giddy." Yan Juexing immediately smiled and quickly got up from the ground. Who would have thought that the great devil that shocked the cultivation world would do something like this? When the hipster saw this, her face immediately changed and she shouted, "Yin Yun, don't treat your father like this. Get down now." Yin Yun pouted. Yan Juexing immediately turned around and smiled at the hipster. "It's okay. If the kid wants to play with him." However, perhaps Yin Yun realized his mistake, or was afraid of his mother who was fierce in appearance. He immediately slid down from Yan Juexing's back. "Why are you unhappy?" Yan Juexing raised his hand and scratched little Yin Yun's nose. Then he carried him and sat beside hipster. Wenqing glared at the father and son pair, then continued to bury her head in embroidering her butterfly. Seeing that his son was still looking away with a straight face, Yan Juexing immediately turned his little head over and frowned. "Yin don't be angry with your mother. Remember, when you grow up, you have to take good care of your mother, or I will be unhappy." Yin Yun pouted and said, "Don't I have father to take care of me?" His words obviously still remembered the hatred of Wenqing scolding him. He completely had the temperament of a child. "If father goes far away, can't you help father take care of mother?" As soon as Yan Juexing's words came out, Wenqing beside him trembled, and suddenly turned to look at him. After the expression on her face changed for a while, she didn't see any other meaning from Yan Juexing. It seemed that he was just educating a child. She then lowered her head and continued to embroider her butterfly, but the stitches were messy. It seemed that she was a little absent-minded and worried about something. "Then I will take care of mother, but father, don't go too far away. Come back soon." Yin Yun threw himself on him, and said while hugging his neck. Yan Juexing smiled and replied with an N. He gently patted his back and asked, "If father goes far away, will you miss father?" Wenqing suddenly bit her lips while Yan Juexing glanced at her slightly. "Yes. Why?" Yin Yun propped himself up and looked at Yan Juexing righteously. He said, "Because father is the most powerful person in the world. I will think that father will teach me to be the most powerful person in the world when he comes back." The most powerful person in the world? The scene of Yu Qianqiu severely injuring him and causing him to flee appeared in Yan Juexing's mind, but he still said, "Okay, it's a deal." He held his son in his arms again and looked outside the palace with a resolute gaze. He thought to himself, "Father won't let you down. When father comes back, you will see the most powerful father in the world. I will also train you to become the most powerful person in the world." After all, a child's physical strength and energy were limited. After playing for a while, he soon fell asleep on Yan Juexing's shoulder. Yan Juexing gently carried him into the room and settled him down. Then, he came out and sat beside Wenqing. He looked at Wenqing, who was embroidering, and had a lot of thoughts. Finally finished. Wenqing heaved a sigh of relief and pulled Yan Juexing's thoughts back to reality. She said with a smile, "Let me see how good Madam's craftsmanship is." When he took the embroidery from Wenqing's hand, his nose slightly twitched, and he smelled a little blood. He glanced at Wenqing's hand and saw a few small needle marks on her left index finger. Obviously, she was pricked by an embroidery needle. In fact, the embroidery needle was not sharp. It could be seen how absent-minded she was to be able to prick her finger. Yan Juexing looked at the embroidery carefully. There were 2 pairs of butterflies hovering on a big auspicious red peony flower. There were a few spots of blood beside the peony flower. Obviously, it was left by the embroidery needle when it pricked her hand. It's really beautiful. I can almost smell the fragrance of the peony flower. And these 2 butterflies are almost alive. I didn't expect the dignified Baiwan Kingdom's princess to have such craftsmanship. Yan Juexing glanced at Wenqing, who was stunned at the side, and pointed at the tentacle of a butterfly. He shook his head and said, "But the stitches here are obviously not tight enough. It's a little messy. Little Qing, are you thinking of something?" Wenqing came back to her senses and stared at him. She bit her lip and said, "Are you leaving again?" Yan Juexing smiled and exerted force in his hand. The round bamboo strip with the white silk immediately shattered into dust. He shook the embroidery, folded it, and put it into his storage bag. He said with a smile, "I want to keep this embroidery with me. Whenever I see it, I will think of you and Yin." The meaning in his words was very obvious. He had already indirectly answered Wenqing's question. In fact, the conversation he had with his son before was to let her be mentally prepared. "Can you not leave me and Yun'er behind? Stop fighting and killing. Can't you just stay with us mother and son for the rest of our lives?" Hipster suddenly knelt down in front of him, hugging his leg as she pleaded. However, Yan Juexing's indifferent expression, as he looked outside the palace, made her unable to continue pestering him. She could only take a step back and squeeze out a forced smile. "Then how long will you be gone this time? When will you be back?" Yan Juexing turned around and reached out to caress her cheek. He said with a smile, "The reason I'm leaving this time is so that one day, our family can live together forever. I have already forged a demonic body and can live forever. Yun'er also has the aptitude for cultivation, so he can at least live for a long time. However, how can I bear to see you grow old alone?" The image of her white hair while her husband and son were still young appeared in Wenqing's mind. She couldn't help but shudder, and didn't know what to do for a moment. When she woke up from her daze, she realized that she had already been carried by Yan Juexing to the bed in the inner room. Needless to say, it was another flood of erotic light. After their indulgence, the 2 of them hugged each other naked. Yan Juexing caressed her smooth body and sighed. "You don't have to worry about Yun'er's future. I have already made arrangements in secret. When he grows up and starts to understand, there will naturally be people who will teach him what to do. Could it be that you are so heartless to abandon us and leave on your own?" Wenqing sobbed as she lay on his chest. "Father's vengeance is absolutely irreconcilable. Besides, there's still grandfather, master, and a group of senior brothers. As long as a man is courageous, how can he endure humiliation to live?" Yan Juexing slowly told Wenqing the information he had obtained from Wenrui in detail, so that she could understand the deep hatred she had to bear. "It's Yu Qianqiu again. Why does he always make life difficult for you?" Wenqing was gnashing her teeth in hatred. "You are still young, only in your 20s. You still have many days to live. If there is still no news of me after 10 years, then don't wait for me. Find a good man and remarry. I don't blame you." After Yan Juexing said this, he ignored Wenqing's crazy sobs and directly pushed her to the side. He got off the bed naked. He walked to the center of the spacious room barefoot. He raised his hand, and the devil blade flashed into his hand from the storage bag on the floor. He grabbed the devil blade with his right hand and fiercely slashed the palm of his left hand. He clenched his left hand into a fist and fresh blood immediately dripped onto the bright and clean floor. Blood splattered everywhere, and not long after, there was a large pool of bright red and dazzling blood on the floor. "What are you doing?" Wenqing on the bed cried out in alarm. She jumped off the bed in a panic and hugged him. Yan Juexing suddenly turned around and stared at her coldly. "Did I waste my words just now? Go back to the bed and don't ruin my plans." With a wave of his hand, Yan Juexing lightly threw her back to the bed and cried. When the blood on the floor had almost accumulated, Yan Juexing suddenly opened his bloody fist. Black killing intent immediately enveloped the bright red wound on his palm. The wound became smaller and smaller, and soon, there was no scar at all. It was truly miraculous. Wenqing was dumbfounded. Only then did she know that he wasn't harming himself. There was indeed an important matter. Then she saw him put his hands together, and holding the devil blade in between his palms, while muttering to himself. No one knew what he was chanting. When the devil blade in his palms started to shine with a faint red light, he single-handedly grabbed a corner of the devil blade and twisted it like a spinning top. The devil blade that was emitting a faint red light suddenly spun in the air like a red ball of light. It lightly floated down to the pool of blood on the floor and began to spin. The pool of blood on the floor also suddenly emitted a faint red light, shining dimly and dimly. On the obedient island of the demon domain, a strong wind suddenly rose in the surroundings, whistling incessantly, as if it was going to blow the house away. Lady Mu, who was sitting cross-legged in the house, suddenly opened her eyes and teleported to the side of the 1,000-mile lake. The wind was abnormally strong, causing her white dress to flutter. She couldn't help but look around strangely. One must know that the obedient island had always been sunny. Apart from man-made factors, there had never been such a strong wind. Chapter 978. However, the strong wind was only a prelude. After a while, dark clouds began to gather in the surrounding sky. The clear sky above the 1,000-mile lake was rapidly compressed by the dark clouds, shrinking at a visible speed. The demons and ghosts around the 1,000-mile lake all looked in the direction of the lake in bewilderment, not knowing if something big was going to happen. Lady Mu had lived in the demon-ghost domain for many years, but she had never heard of such an abnormal phenomenon above the 1,000-mile lake. For a moment, she looked around in surprise. All of a sudden, the rippling lake water around the obedient island became completely still. Not only the surroundings, but even as far as the eye could see, the entire lake had become deathly still. Not even the wind could move it, causing one's heart to sink. Lady Mu quickly released her divine sense to scan the lake water around Obedient Island. As a result, she found that the fish in the water were fleeing in terror, as if something terrible was about to happen. With so many abnormal phenomena gathered together, Lady Mu did not dare to hesitate, and quickly took out a silver ball. Yu Qianqiu had told her that if there was anything abnormal in the demon-ghost domain, she should immediately report to him. Moreover, it was such a strange phenomenon, so she did not dare to delay. Otherwise, if something happened, she, a small tree demon, could not bear the consequences. Regarding the affairs of the demon-ghost domain, although Yu Qianqiu was a hands-off manager, once something really happened, he would immediately take the top priority to deal with it. After all, the demon-ghost domain was the foundation of the demon-ghost immortal exterminating formation, the strongest line of defense against the strong enemies of the outside world. After receiving Lady Mu's call, Yu Qianqiu immediately put down everything he was doing and appeared on Obedient Island. However, as soon as he appeared, he was caught unprepared by the strong wind around him. He thought that he had gone to the wrong place, and then he realized that he had been ambushed. Purple flames quickly covered his body, and at the same time, he held the divine sword in his hand, intending to kill all the enemies who dared to ambush him. After quickly seeing the situation around him, he was slightly relieved. He immediately turned around and shouted angrily, "Lady Mu, what's going on?" Lady Mu was shocked by his powerful entrance with the divine sword in his hand and purple flames. His sharp and threatening murderous aura especially scared her so much that she was trembling with fear. Faced with the scolding, Madame Mu hurriedly bowed and said, "Mister, I don't know what's going on either. This abnormality happened just now." This little demon couldn't figure out the situation and didn't dare to delay, so she immediately summoned Mister to keep watch. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and stared sharply at Lady Mu's face. Seeing that she did not seem to be lying, he quickly retracted the purple flames and the divine sword. His robes fluttered in the wind. He then looked up into the sky and saw that the last ray of light had been completely annihilated by the dark clouds. From the looks of it, it was not far from Obedient Island. In the blink of an eye, the sound of the wind became even stronger, and the world became so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. There was a crackling sound of thunder in the sky, and bolts of lightning crisscrossed in the sky, illuminating Lady Mu's slightly frightened face. Ever since she grew up in the demon domain, she had never seen such a situation in the demon domain. Lady Mu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a panicked gaze. From time to time, bolts of lightning crisscrossed and flashed, illuminating Yu Qianqiu, who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Yu Qianqiu's expression was cold and emotionless. His eyes quickly swept around like an owl, and no one knew what he was thinking under his cold face. As the sky darkened and the thunder grew louder, a bright moon was held up by Yu Qianqiu, illuminating the surroundings with a vast expanse of whiteness. After the dazzling white light faded a little, the heaven's eye mirror showed the scene of a certain place in the demon domain. It was the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. However, compared to the changes in the sky, the 9th netherworld cave was the same as usual. There was no abnormal phenomenon, eliminating the possibility of someone coming out of the netherworld. Then, the scene in the heaven's eye mirror quickly changed, scanning the entire demon domain at an extremely fast speed. Nothing could escape Yu Qianqiu's eyes. However, the strange thing was that after using the heaven's eye mirror to inspect the entire demon domain, he found that other places were the same as usual. There was no change except for the sky above the 1,000-mile lake, which was shrouded by the inexplicable dark clouds. Thinking of the position where the last ball of light had disappeared in the sky, Yu Qianqiu's eyes fell directly on the position corresponding to the surface of the lake. Lady Mu didn't know what he had found, so she also looked in that direction. Almost at the same time, the deathly still surface of the 1,000-mile lake gradually began to ripple. To be exact, the lake water began to swirl. At the position they were looking at, with that place as the center, a whirlpool gradually appeared. Boom! A thunderbolt fell from the sky and directly struck the center of the whirlpool. Then, boom, boom, boom. A series of dazzling greenish-white thunderbolts struck the center of the whirlpool. The scene was extremely strange. Lady Mu secretly glanced at Yu Qianqiu, thinking that he might have found something since he had looked at that position in advance. He couldn't let Yin Juexing succeed. For a moment, Yu Qianqiu was full of murderous intent and became much more vigilant. In the Wenqing Palace of Baiwan country, Yin Juexing, who was standing naked, was shocked. He took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. He had just performed the great method of Devil God to find the exact entrance to the demon realm, but it was inexplicably and forcibly interrupted. Immediately, he was backfired by the great method and harmed himself. The hipster cried out in alarm and ran off the bed naked to help him up, but he waved his arm to shake her off. Yin Juexing took a few steps forward and knelt in front of the hideous pool of blood, laughing wildly. The entrance to the demon realm. The entrance to the demon realm. I found it. I finally found it. Chapter 979. After a burst of ecstasy, Yin Juexing knelt in front of the pool of blood and cried again. No one knew what sad thing he was thinking of. The hipster, who was pushed to the ground by him, supported his body with some pain. Obviously he was hurt by the fall. Looking at Yin Juexing, who was crying, her expression was very complicated. Then her eyes fell on the ground in front of him, that had condensed into a dark red color. On the ground, the blood had solidified. After the demonic blade rotated for a while, it left a strange picture. If one looked carefully, they would find that it was a macroscopic map of mountains and rivers. The demonic blade that had stopped rotating stood quietly in a certain position. There was a faint red light constantly flashing in that position. After crying for a while, Yin Juexing laughed wildly again. No one knew whether he was happy or sad. He straightened up, wiped his tears, pulled out the demonic blade, and knelt in front of the dark red geographical map of mountains and rivers to look at it carefully. However, when he saw the position of the demonic blade just now, the ecstatic expression on his face froze. He sat on the ground and muttered to himself with dull eyes. The demon realm. It's actually the demon realm. The entrance to the demon realm is actually in the demon realm controlled by Yu Qianqiu. This was a huge blow to him. He had finally found the entrance to the demon realm, but he found that it was in Yu Qianqiu's territory. Now that he was afraid of Yu Qianqiu, if he asked him to go to the demon ghost domain, what was the difference between that and asking him to die? The most helpless thing was that the demon realm had always been mysterious to the entire cultivation world. He didn't know the specific situation in the demon realm at all, so he didn't dare to take risks. He was afraid that he would be discovered as soon as he broke into the demon realm. The room was silent for a long time, and then there was the rustling sound of the hipster's clothes. The hipster picked up Yan Juixing's clothes on the ground, walked gently to Yan Juixing's side, knelt down, and said softly, "Put on your clothes first." Then she took Yan Juixing's arm hard, helped him up, and quietly helped him put on his clothes. After she was dressed, she hugged his waist from behind and said softly against his back, "Listen to me. If it's too dangerous, it's better not to go. Isn't it good for our family to be safe and sound together?" Yan Juixing came back to his senses and sighed softly. He gently pulled away the soft hands on his abdomen and turned around to hold Hipster's shoulders. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. One wrong step leads to many wrong steps. Now, it's not about whether I want to let go or not, but Yu Qianqiu won't let me go at all. As long as I stay here for another day, there's a chance that I'll give myself away, and you and your son will be in danger for another day. With his current power and influence, if he wanted to kill me, it would only be a matter of time before he found me. I know his nature all too well. That guy is vicious and merciless. Once he finds out about my relationship with you and your mother, I'm afraid that not only will he not let me off, he will also not let you and your mother off. Therefore I must leave. For you and Yin even if I have to divert his attention. Hipster shook her head in grief and indignation. Is there no one in this world who can control him? Are we just going to let him do whatever he wants in this world? No. No one in this world can be his opponent. Yan Juixing shook his head with certainty and said, "It's a pity that there's no place for me in the human world. Otherwise, if I have time to cultivate the demonic skill, Yu Qianqiu won't be my opponent. It's not that I don't have a chance, but I've missed it. Now, he won't give me any more chances. He won't stop until he kills me." Hipster suddenly burst into tears. Yan Juixing gently pushed her away, turned around, and waved his hand toward the ground. The blood on the ground immediately turned into ashes. Then he said, "I should go. Take care of yourself and Yin." Black spirits emitted from all over his body, and in the blink of an eye, he turned back into Shouchen. His body turned into a shadow and flashed away. After flying out of the green winching palace, he could still hear Hipster's cries. He took a deep breath and quickly flew toward the region of demons. Just as he said to Hipster, with Yu Qianqiu's monstrous power, it was only a matter of time before Yu Qianqiu found him. There was no longer a place for him in this world, and he had no way out. The only way was to find a way to hide in the demon world to cultivate and come out for revenge when the time was right. If it was really impossible, he didn't mind opening the passage to the demon world completely and letting the demons of the demon world out to wreak havoc in the human world. Of course, for Hipster and Yin, as well as his mother and sister, he wouldn't do that until the last moment. However, he didn't go to the demon ghost region without any help. The only thing he could rely on was his changed appearance. He hoped to get close to the entrance to the demon world by deceiving people. It could be said that he spent a lot of time going to the demon ghost region, mainly because he wasted time on the journey. Avoiding the cultivators of the cultivation world was one reason. More importantly, he didn't dare to fly too fast and expose his cultivation. In order to avoid the search of various forces, he took a lot of detours. When he arrived at the demon ghost region, it was already a few days later. As soon as he entered the territory of the demon ghost region, he began to tremble with fear. He had long heard that the demon ghost region was full of demons and ghosts. He was afraid that the slightest movement would alarm Yu Qianqiu. He was very careful along the way. He was gambling, and he had to take the risk. Of course, he still had a way out. Once he met Yu Qianqiu, he would use the blood escape to escape. However, the strange thing was that the entire demon ghost region was terrifyingly quiet. There was no sound at all. He flew stealthily all the way. Although he saw a lot of demons and ghosts, none of them discovered him. After half a day, there was no accident or trouble at all. This made him feel a little guilty. He even thought of turning back and escaping. However, in the end, he made up his mind and decided to gamble. Maybe Yu Qianqiu wasn't in the demon ghost region. Moreover, how could he not take risks when he wanted to achieve great things? He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had already ordered the entire demon ghost region to monitor all suspicious people who broke into the demon ghost region. From the moment Yan Juexing stepped into the demon ghost region, he was already discovered by a tree demon. This was because Yan Juexing happened to hide in the bushes where he was for a while. Perhaps he thought that the trees were dense and suitable for hiding. However, the tree demon didn't alarm him. After he went far away, it quickly sent the news to the local demon king. The demon king also sent the news to Obedient Island as fast as possible. Humph! You're as adventurous as me. You still came after all. There was a way to heaven, but you didn't take it. There's no door to hell, but you still came. Let's see where you can escape this time. Yu Qianqiu sneered. He had been guarding Obedient Island for a few days. As soon as he received the news, the Heaven Eye Mirror, which was already scanning around, immediately locked on to the person who came. Looking at the stranger floating in front of him in the Heaven Eye Mirror, Yu Qianqiu already determined that he was the incarnation of Yan Juexing. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to run to the demon ghost region. Moreover, the direction he came from was Obedient Island of the 1,000-mile lake. Yu Qianqiu didn't rush to kill him. Instead, he quietly waited for Yan Juexing's arrival. Yan Juexing had escaped twice with the blood escape technique, which had taught him a lesson. The blood escape technique of the demonic technique was too strange. Once he escaped, he wouldn't even know where the opponent was going. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to kill him. He wanted to let Yan Juexing come in. He wanted to see if Yan Juexing could escape from the central region of the demon ghost domain. Given how vast the demon ghost domain was, once he used the blood escape, he would be able to escape. If he couldn't, as long as he was still in the demon ghost region, his eyes and ears would be able to find him. He didn't believe that Yan Juexing had so many broken limbs to use the blood escape technique. Chapter 980. As he dived deeper and deeper, the azure blue waves slowly turned dark, and the water became colder and colder. His current cultivation was much higher than before, and with the help of his water arts, the huge pressure of the lake was no longer able to stop him from diving deeper. His vision gradually turned pitch black, and he could hear the sound of his body shuttling through the water. Not long after, a faint white light appeared at the bottom of the quiet lake. With his previous experience, Yu Qianqiu was not surprised at all, and quickly scuttled over. A white jade-like barrier of light hung at the bottom of the lake, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. One could vaguely see the underwater mountain range, especially the pillar that rose up to the surface of the lake, the peak of which was the Obedient Island. The strange deep-water fish that were leisurely swimming in the surroundings suddenly fled in fright from the sudden appearance of a human figure. Yu Qianqiu descended on the light barrier and used all of his power to press down on it. As expected, he found that the defense set up by the 10,000 Swords Demon Monarch was not easy to destroy. He then relaxed and quickly checked the surroundings of the light barrier, memorizing the general terrain in his mind. After identifying the direction Yan Juexing came from, he lightly landed behind a rock at the bottom of the lake. He took out a silver-white straw cape and put it on. After shaking it a bit, the cape flashed with white light, and he disappeared at the bottom of the lake. This straw cape was the spoils of war from the battle with the 4 Islands sect masters at the mystic immortal city's life and death mound. Its function was to hide underwater, and even spiritual sense could not detect it. It was a good item for hiding underwater. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind the rock, gently took out his divine sword. This time, he had made up his mind to deal a fatal blow to Yan Juexing. He definitely could not let him escape. As for whether killing Yan Juexing would attract the demon god behind him to deal with him, he was no longer as apprehensive as before. Judging from the cause and effect, he believed that the demon god should have some misgivings in the deity realm. If he could directly intervene and help Yin Juexing, he would be the one hiding everywhere, and not Yin Juexing. Time passed bit by bit. The sun, moon, and stars could not be seen in the world under the lake. Who knew how much time had passed? Yu Qianqiu's patience did not go to waste. After the distant deep-water fishes fled in panic, he immediately became spirited, knowing that what should come had come. Hence, he poked his head out from behind the rock to look around. He wasn't worried that the other party would discover him anyway. Under the illumination of the light shield, the magic blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone with a faint cold light. It stood upright at the bottom of the water and opened a path, giving off the feeling of a sailboat or the dorsal fin of a shark. Yin Juexing stood in the inner arc of the magic blade, holding the back of the blade with one hand, carefully observing his surroundings. He stopped about 200 meters away from the light barrier and looked at the transparent white light barrier in front of him with an expression of ecstasy. He had been on tenterhooks along the way and had finally arrived at his destination. However, he did not let his happiness get to his head. Instead, he calmed down and scanned his surroundings. He was not in a hurry to get close to the light barrier. Instead, he steered the magic blade around slowly. Damn it! Cowardly bandit, you are already here. What's the use of being careful? The invisible Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. However, he was not worried. At this point, even if Yin Juexing found something suspicious, he believed that he would risk his life. Even if he wanted to escape, it was too late. However, he did not want any accidents to happen. After all, it was still unknown whether the other party could escape the range of the demon domain in one go with the blood escape. He still had to wait for the right opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Yin Juexing, who was carefully searching around, used his eyes and divine sense to look around. After confirming that there was no problem, he circled around and returned to his original place. There was an excited expression on his face. The magic blade shrank and returned to his hand. He boldly rushed to the front of the light barrier, touched the light barrier with his hand, and looked through the light barrier to see the situation inside. Inside the light barrier was a pile of ferocious stone forest. In the middle there was an ancient cave door that looked like a cave. There was no door at the entrance, but a piece of iron covered with all kinds of strange runes sealed the entire cave entrance. This should be the masterpiece of immortal Emperor Jin Tai, an emperor of the underworld by Qi. Yu Qianqiu had seen the situation inside when he came, but that was not what he wanted to care about. At this moment, the distance between the two sides was less than 10 meters. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He slowly raised the divine sword in his hand. With the sharpness of the divine sword, he was confident that he could kill Yin Juexing in one move. Just as Yin Juexing was about to use the magic blade to break the light barrier, there was a sudden explosion behind him. It was the kind of explosion that came from something moving at high speed in the water. Moreover, it was very close. Yin Juexing did not have the time to react in shock. The magic blade that he used had already disappeared above him like lightning. Boom! With a loud sound, Yin Juexing turned around and was immediately hit by a strong impact on the light barrier. However, the moment he turned around, he saw with his own eyes the scene of the demonic blade being sent flying by a light golden longsword. This light golden longsword was shocking to him. It was the one that Yu Qianqiu had used to injure him last time. It was Yu Qianqiu. A thought flashed through Yin Juexing's mind. I've fallen into a trap. In a flash, he realized that Yu Qianqiu had waited patiently until now to make a move. It was obvious that he had been deliberately waiting for him. In an instant, he understood why he could come here safely. Yin Juexing was instantly scared out of his wits. He knew that the other party had planned to kill him. Even if he used the blood escape, he would not be able to escape from the other party's control in the demon region. What if there was no way to escape? Magic fist. Yin Juexing punched the transparent light barrier almost without hesitation. He had no way out now. He was not Yu Qianqiu's opponent even if he fought. The only way out was to risk his life and charge into the demonic world. Boom! He easily punched a hole in the transparent light barrier, and Yan Juexing rushed in recklessly. However, the moment he rushed in, the long sword that had sent the demonic blade flying quickly stabbed towards him, directly piercing through his chest from his back to his chest. Ah! Yan Juexing screamed. With a bloody hole in his chest, he fell into the light barrier. He clutched his chest and rolled on the ground, appearing to be in extreme pain. The moment he rushed in, the light barrier closed at the same time. Bang! F*ck. The sound of the collision was accompanied by curses. The invisible Yu Qianqiu hit the light barrier, and was bounced back. He immediately lifted the bamboo hat on his head, and revealed his true appearance. He dashed over and punched the light barrier angrily. However, there was only a muffled sound from the light barrier, and a ripple appeared. The force that he exerted was completely offset. Yu Qianqiu looked at his own fist in disbelief. He could not imagine that he could not break open something that Yan Juexing could smash open with one punch. There was no justice in this world. At this moment, a black shadow flitted by and directly broke through the light barrier. It floated beside Yan Juexing, who was rolling on the ground. It was the magic blade that was knocked away. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it. Without saying a word, he grabbed the flying sword and slashed at the light barrier. However, when the sword hit the light barrier, it was like hitting a pile of cotton. It could not break the light barrier at all. F*ck. I don't believe it. Yu Qianqiu was instantly enraged. Yan Juexing's men could easily enter, and so could the magic blade. Whether it was his cultivation or the divine sword in his hand, they were stronger than the other party, but he just could not enter. This was really absurd. He held the divine sword with both hands, and slashed at the light barrier crazily. However, no matter how sharp the divine sword was, it seemed to be unable to do anything to the light barrier. At this moment, Yan Juexing, who had a short period of self-healing, slowly climbed up. His chest and back emitted a black aura that wrapped around his wounds, and kept healing them. After a while his wounds were healed. The pale Yan Juexing raised his head, and looked at the almost crazy Yu Qianqiu outside. A sneer gradually appeared on his face. Then, it turned into a maniacal laughter. He waved his arms high and said, I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Yu Qianqiu, so what if you tried your best? It's a pity that man proposes but God disposes. God is indeed helping me. The laughter inside was unusually ear-piercing to Yu Qianqiu's ears. Yu Qianqiu, who was fuming with anger, stopped his useless slashes. He pointed at Yan Juexing and shouted, Yan Juexing, don't be a coward if you are so capable. Come out and fight me to the death if you are a man. Yan Juexing had a mocking expression on his face. He sneered and said, This day will come but not now. When I come out of the demonic world, it will be the time of your death. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the sealed cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest. Stop right there. Yu Qianqiu held his sword and shouted angrily, Yan Juexing, if you don't come out, I will immediately go to Fuxian Island and execute your mother and sister. Yan Juexing suddenly stopped and turned around. His expression twitched, and he said with a ferocious expression, Yu Qianqiu, there is no need to provoke me. I believe you can do it. Go ahead and kill them. One day, I will get it back from you with interest. It was as if he wanted to engrave Yu Qianqiu's appearance in his mind. His eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Yu Qianqiu without moving, and slowly retreated into the depths of the stone forest. Bastard! Come out if you have the guts. Yu Qianqiu shouted anxiously outside the light barrier. If he opened the passage to the demonic world for Yan Juexing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore he raised his sword and slashed randomly. He couldn't figure out which side the demon lord of 10,000 swords was on. The formation that he laid down could actually defend against his own people, but not others. After a series of slashes and slashes, there was no effect. In a moment of desperation, a ball of purple fire appeared in his palm, and condensed the temperature to the highest. The purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier. This was originally a desperate move because, in his understanding, the power of the divine sword was stronger than the purple fire. However, the strange thing was that after the purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier, The huge light barrier actually trembled. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but let out an eh. He could feel the light barrier slowly thinning where his palm was pressed. In just a short while, the fire palm burned a hole in the light barrier, and his palm directly reached in. Yu Qianqiu immediately shouted excitedly, "Yin Juixing! Don't even think of running away today." Chapter 981. When Yin Juixing saw this, he was shocked. He hurriedly dashed to the cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest, bit his finger, and drew a rune on the iron seal. "Don't run. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu was exasperated. When he came to his senses, he realized that the hole was only the size of a palm, and he couldn't get in at all. But who would have thought that as soon as he pulled his hand out, the palm-sized hole in the light barrier would immediately close up. It was easy to deal with it now that he knew how to deal with it. Yu Qianqiu's body emitted a ball of purple fire, and his whole body stuck to the light shield, wanting to burn a hole and enter directly. Yin Juixing looked back and immediately panicked. It would take some time to use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal. It was not as fast as Yu Qianqiu burning the light shield. He immediately said angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, don't force me. If you force me, I don't mind opening the passage to the demonic world by force. When the demons wreak havoc in the human world, no one will have a good time. Don't F***king fool me here. Didn't you come here to open the passage to the demonic world?" Yu Qianqiu was also burning with anxiety. He raised the temperature of the purple fire to the highest. He was really in a hurry, afraid that Yin Juixing would open the passage to the demonic world before he entered. "Yu Qianqiu, I swear to the demonic god that I definitely did not lie to you." Yin Juixing was anxious, and he realized that he had drawn the wrong demonic rune on the iron seal. He was so sad that he almost cried. He had to redraw it again, but the god of plagues was chasing him from behind. Where would he find the time? He then continued to explain as he redrew. "Yu Qianqiu, I don't mind telling you that if I wanted to enter the demonic world before I got the demonic blade, I could only open the seal by force. But it's different now. I have the demonic blade, and I can use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal without destroying the seal. Don't give me that. Go and lie to your dead grandfather and your dead father." Yu Qianqiu blurted out. He didn't even consider whether Yin Juixing was telling the truth or not. He just seized the time to destroy the light barrier. "Bastard, I'm telling the truth, yet you don't believe me." Yin Juixing also cursed out of desperation. His tone seemed to be similar to Yu Qianqiu's. He roared, "Do you really want to force me to open the seal of the demonic world by force? Hehe, these tricks are all my leftovers. Looking at you, I guess it will take some time to open the passage to the demon realm." Yu Qianqiu's face had already squeezed through the light barrier, and he was smirking evilly. His body was about to enter as well. When Yin Juixing saw this, his expression immediately became distorted. "Yu Qianqiu, don't regret it. You forced me to do this." The roar reverberated endlessly, and the demon blade angrily drew a pentagonal pattern on the hard iron seal. Bloody Finger also drew a pentagonal pattern floating in the air, and a spell was cast on it. The floating pentagonal pattern burst into red light, and it burst onto the iron seal, fusing with the pentagonal pattern on it. Damn it! This guy really pretended to be serious. It can't be true, right? Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he watched Yin Juixing's actions. He felt that he was about to break through the light barrier. He thought to himself, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. As long as I kill that guy, everything will be over. Yu Qianqiu, you will regret your actions today. Yin Juixing roared angrily. He turned around and pointed at the center of the pentagonal pattern on the iron seal. He said sternly, "The power of the demon god is invincible. Break." The floating demonic blade suddenly burst into red light and crashed into the center of the pentagonal pattern. First, there was a burst of dazzling light, followed by a boom sound. The accumulated silt at the bottom of the lake floated up. The powerful shock caused Yu Qianqiu to stagger. After he steadied himself, he tragically discovered that he had retreated at the wrong time. The light barrier that was about to shatter had actually closed up again. Yan Juexing suddenly looked back and saw that Yu Qianqiu had retreated. He thought that Yu Qianqiu had realized his mistake and turned back. He shook his head with grief and indignation. It's too late. It's too late. The iron seal on the cave abode behind him had disappeared without a trace. Inside the cave abode, a black light the size of a fist was slowly rotating and expanding. Yu Qianqiu leaned on the light barrier and looked at it dumbfoundedly. He had participated in the Divine Ruin Realm Convention and knew what the expanding black light in the cave abode meant. It meant that the gate to a certain realm had opened. The gate to the demonic realm had opened. Oh my God! Yu Qianqiu immediately roared. Bastard! What have you done? It's true, why didn't you tell me earlier? Fuck you! I have told you several times. You didn't listen, and forced me to do this. Yan Juexing roared angrily. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. It seemed that the other party had emphasized it again. However, he was certain that it was not his fault. He immediately roared. With your character, do you think I can believe your words? Then what the fuck do you want me to say to you? Yan Juexing roared and turned around. He saw the black light rotating like a dark cloud in the cave abode. The passage to the demonic realm had been completely opened. He immediately watched Yu Qianqiu slowly retreat into the rotating black light. He gritted his teeth and said, Yu Qianqiu, aren't you known as the #1 expert in the world? Then think of a way to protect the human world. I hope that when I return you will still be alive. At that time, I will settle the old and new grudges. As his voice disappeared, Yan Juexing's figure also disappeared. He was swallowed by the rotating black light and left the human world that he had lived in regardless of his emotions. The grudges between him and Yu Qianqiu had temporarily come to an end. The asterisk starred. Yu Qianqiu could only watch as Yan Juexing left. He angrily punched the light barrier. If he knew this would happen, he would have disregarded everything and chased Yan Juexing outside the 1,000-mile lake. There was no need to make things so messy. Just when he was extremely annoyed, he suddenly felt that his punch on the light barrier had caused the entire barrier to shake violently. Yu Qianqiu looked at his own fist in shock. Previously, he didn't even have such great power when he used all his strength. How could a casual punch have such great power now? What kind of rubbish construction is this? Could this be a sign that the demons from the demonic realm are coming out? Yu Qianqiu clenched the divine sword in his hand tightly and stared at the exit of the demonic realm. Suddenly he couldn't help but exclaim. The exit of the demonic realm didn't have any movements for the time being. Instead, the light barrier that had been shaking violently seemed to be shrinking. Looking at the marks on the ground, he confirmed that he wasn't mistaken. Not only was the light barrier shrinking, but it was also shrinking faster and faster. The area of the huge light barrier was shrinking, but the light was becoming more and more dazzling. In a short moment, it had shrunk into a ball of strong light and condensed at the exit of the demonic realm. Immediately after, the strong light quickly rotated and suppressed the black light at the entrance. Boom! A loud sound burst out from the entrance of the cave. The light suddenly burst out and was so dazzling that Yu Qianqiu couldn't open his eyes. After the mountain shaking and the earth calmed down, Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes. Without the light from the light barrier, it was pitch black in front of him. With his super eyesight, he could only see the mud at the bottom of the lake floating everywhere. It was a blur, and he couldn't see the situation in front of him clearly. Yu Qianqiu looked around in bewilderment. He put on the bamboo hat behind his head and turned invisible again. He quietly floated towards the exit of the demonic realm. He didn't dare to get too close. He hid behind a rock in the stone forest and watched. He was worried that some expert from the demonic realm would come out. When the floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually settled down, he finally saw the situation at the entrance of the cave. He was dumbstruck and lifted the bamboo hat on his head again. The floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually calmed down. Everything in front of him gradually became clear. The swirling black light in the cave abode had disappeared. The seal that Yan Juexing had opened was now sealed by another iron seal with a pattern of patterns. What was going on? It couldn't be an illusion, right? Yu Qianqiu flashed to the front of the cave. He held the divine sword and looked around suspiciously. Then, he touched the solid iron seal with his own hands. He discovered that the entrance to the demonic realm had been sealed again. It was simply unimaginable. Yu Qianqiu felt relieved. However, an even greater doubt arose in his heart. He asked himself what was going on. He walked around the outside of the cave and looked at the light barrier that had disappeared. The place was pitch black. The pearl at the bottom of the lake that had supported the demonic realm for more than 100,000 years had disappeared. He immediately understood. Needless to say, the mastermind behind the demonic realm being sealed again must be the person who laid the light barrier outside the seal. It was the demon monarch of thousand swords who had been dead for more than 100,000 years, but still exerted his remaining power and influenced the three realms to this day. However, what Yu Qianqiu couldn't understand was, could it be that the demon monarch of thousand swords knew that someone would open the demonic realm seal more than 100,000 years ago? So he made arrangements in advance? If he really had such divine foresight, how could he have died in the hands of Jin Tai and Bai Qi? What puzzled Yu Qianqiu the most was, why could Yan Juexing and his demonic blade easily break into the formation? But he himself couldn't break in even after expending so much effort and energy. Could it be that the demon monarch of thousand swords already knew that someone in the human realm could cultivate demonic arts? So he set up this formation to wait for the person who cultivated demonic arts to open the passageway to the demonic realm. Then, after the person entered the demonic realm, he sealed the demonic realm again, so that the person in the demonic realm couldn't come out? Thinking about it, it seemed that everything was possible, but there were many doubts. However, there was one thing that he vaguely understood. After coming into contact with the light barrier, he vaguely felt that the formation of this light barrier was related to the purple flames in the world. Otherwise, how could the purple flames fuse and break something that even a divine sword couldn't break? There was also the heaven and earth universe formation set up in the Eastern Holy Lands. It was also set up using the energy of the purple flames of the world. These two formations were undoubtedly created by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. It was very obvious that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord had some understanding of how to use the energy of the purple flames of the world. The heaven and earth Qianquan array was like this. And so was the array at the entrance of the demon realm. Could it be that the demonic ghost immortal execution array and the soul-transforming smoke array outside the immortal ascension stage were also like this? If everything related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords was related to the purple fire energy, then would the release of the divine dragon locked underground also be related to the purple fire energy? If this assumption was true, then the things that happened in these places were more or less related to him. And he just so happened to know how to use the purple flames. Didn't that mean that all the blame was on him? You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.